Fuzzy Belvedere, I want to go to you immediately, and I want to talk about this 70% because this was from Ecstasies. He actually had put this in there, and I had already watched the incredible Xbox era interview, which of course I'm going to add to the show notes. So if you missed it, definitely get over there and celebrate John, Nick, and Jesse for an amazing interview with Phil Spencer. Obviously, they're celebrating the 250 episode of Xbox era. That's a really big milestone. And again, this is now, I think, the second or third time Phil's been on. Obviously, he trusts them to come onto the show, which is pretty good. So, according to Ecstasies, and I'm going to use his tweet, he says Phil Spencer has dropped a bombshell, Fuzzy, that redefines gaming. The 70% and again, this is a quote from Phil Spencer, just so we're clear. The 70% that we make from games on other platforms helps us build big portfolios. Basically, Xbox no longer relies on exclusivity to be profitable. Now, that 70%, according to the tweet, of sales outside of the ecosystem on PlayStation, Nintendo, and Steam is enough to keep Xbox afloat and in a big way. According to Ecstasies, we are witnessing the end of the console war as we know it. He's asking a question. And look, here's the thing. Obviously, Sony, more specifically, and many of the journos, as well as the community, touted how much Sony took from that 30% that they were getting from Activision before it was owned by Microsoft, and using it for AAA development, right? And that's a fact. Sony has said that. And that's obviously, that's good business. You're making a lot of money from Call of Duty, which if you just look at the numbers from last year, 67%, almost 68% of the dollars that Microsoft made came the way of PlayStation and PlayStation 4 and 5. That's a lot of players. A lot of players still are using PlayStation to play Call of Duty. Now, have they moved some of those people over to Game Pass? Sure. But that's still a lot of money. Well, I think that when Phil is specifically asked about that 70%, and he makes mention of AAA development, I think that this is a great conversation to have, because what this ultimately does is remove risk from AAA development. And we're seeing, more specifically, and again, when you talk about Xbox, you really got to talk about PlayStation. There is a one-to-one there. Yeah. Sony is in a bit of a pickle, right? They made a lot of big changes at leadership recently. But before they got to this change in leadership, they were having some problems with an identity, right? We all know Sony as being this big AAA, banger maker, right? They make all these big AAA games, and they sell well. They sell decently, right? Only a couple have really crossed like that 20 and 30 million. Spider-Man, God of War. There's quite a few others, but AAA development is expensive. I mean, Spider-Man was 315 million, right, before advertising. And Spider-Man 2 was outsold by a very smaller title in Hellblade, which did really well for PlayStation because they did day and date. Now, getting back to the 70% with Xbox, I think what this ultimately does is it does justify to the shareholders why Game Pass could live, because we are paying our $20 a month, and they have potentially, 40 million, right? That's the rumor. 41 million is the rumored number. Yeah. Right? But they're also now moving games over to PlayStation. They're moving them over to Nintendo. They've always been on Steam. So that additional 70% that Phil Spencer was talking about is money coming back in that normally wouldn't be there. And that is allowing for them to do the AAA development without risk, as opposed to what's going on with Sony, where they don't have a roadmap and they don't have big AAA games from everyone in development, because they were just shifted back to doing that. And what did Shuhei Yoshida say? He said that if you want AAA big budgeted games, what do you got to do, Fuzzy? You got to buy our... There you go, sir. Let's talk about that 70%. I think this is a bit of a revelation for Xbox, even though a lot of us old heads don't like it because it is what it is. But
yeah, I really wish that these companies weren't as secretive on some of these numbers, because I'm willing to bet that the average Xbox customer on average has a higher attach rate than the average PlayStation customer. Reason being, based on that 70% and roughly 35 to 40 million consoles out there. I'm not going with that BS of the 26. That was pretty much debunked when they were saying they were ahead of the track of Xbox One into the second year. But in any event, with the attachment rate, much like with Nintendo, they have a very high attachment rate per software that they sell. So they're making money hand over fist for each copy, where they keep their budget low for the games that they make, and they reap in the profits as far as for the games that almost never go on sale. Now, when it comes to like PlayStation, they've had to shift moves from going from this games as a service, which is a good revenue staple to have in your pocket. If you can have these games that constantly receive funding from season passes or character skins or what have you, if you can keep your players playing those games and spending money in those games, that will help fund other things. Xbox has already been doing that. And now that they own, basically two of the biggest games that stay in the top 10, and they have like three other games that stay in like the top 20, I would say they have that games as a service, piggy bank already covered. And by them putting these other games, getting that extra, that 70% on top of whatever they're getting on reoccurring revenue on the PC customers that are in Game Pass, or the console customers that are in Game Pass, they're now able to get pretty much either full price or full sales price or whatever for some of that software outside of Steam on like the Switch or on like the PS5. And in doing that 70% can go and counter what it costs to develop these games. Now, bear in mind, Spider-Man being 300 and some odd million, some of that is probably a licensing fee, probably a good bit of it's licensing fee. Because if you've played Spider-Man, the original 2018, you've played Spider-Man 2, there isn't that tremendous leap. So, and I'm not saying they're reusing assets, but it's a lot easier to go from a Spider-Man 2018 to a Spider-Man 2 without having to start all over from scratch. So that should save you some cost or expense as far as the development for that game. And somehow they found a way to still be over the 300 mil mark. Yet Helldivers 2 outsold it and made more of a profit per sale in comparison, which kind of goes to show that if you spend these high budgets and you don't have a way of recouping the money through that game just being on one platform, you're going to have to look at other places. And that 70% in your pocket is a good way to do that, because that covers, whatever other operating expense for servers, the salaries for the studio, any additional hardware or research stuff that they've had to do, much like with Ninja Theory, with doing a lot of that motion capture stuff and building a whole new studio for the team and a whole new studio for motion capture and stuff. So that 70% can be reinvested, making a lot of that upfront costs or that high expense seem more manageable. And then at that point, as long as you're not bleeding subscribers from your subscription service, and you're able to get enough interest on other platforms to purchase along with your primary platform to purchase, then you're golden. Man. You're going to continue making profit all around at that point. And that's the way to secure things. PlayStation was going to try that with the games as a service. Now they've had to kind of scuttle that to some extent after Concord. Fair Game is delayed, I'm hearing. I didn't even know it was being delayed. I still thought it was on target for 2025.
Apparently it's been moved to 26. At least that story that I read from VGC said that the game has been moved to 2026.
So Sony's already gun shy as it is, and they're trying to figure out ways to, cut some of that expense by divvying up a game that should be a complete game. They're going to split it up, or the rumor was they were going to split it up into 3 parts based on that leak that, they'll sell you maybe chapter 1 and chapter 2 and chapter 3 of Spider-Man 3 or something along those lines to kind of spread that cost out and make a better margin on each software that they sell. But yeah, that 70%, that's more than enough, especially when you have pretty much the game that stays in the top 1 or 2 or at least in the top 3 between GTA and Fortnite. Call of Duty is always there in some way, shape, or form, whether it's Warzone or it's this new app that's all of the Call of Duties rolled into one kind of thing. But yeah, that 70% is going to be the way moving forward, so they can continue to acquire studios or continue to have multiple teams at these studios, making or launching multiple projects and having multiple games launch from those studios. That's the way to stay, a profitable publisher. And moving forward, I think that's the route that they're going to focus on, as opposed to console sales like they once did.
Well, I mean, listen, the Xbox console sales have been egregious, right? They consistently going down. It was almost 29%, or it was 29 something percent. People are not buying the console anymore. Why? Because you could play Xbox everywhere. As a matter of fact, during the interview, and we will again, I'm going to try and break down the 36 minutes that Xbox Era did, because they had spill for over half an hour. The last few minutes was, the game show that they normally play, and it was actually pretty good. I want to bring that, like, chop it up so we can make a lot of not a lot of content, but at least be able to appreciate what he answered. So we're going to break that down. We'll probably the next 2 days we'll have at least one topic covering what he said. But in that interview, he specifically mentioned about how well they're doing in Asia and that they're not selling consoles. And how are they doing good? Through PC, which is why they want everything to be an Xbox, so you don't actually need an Xbox. It's just the way the world is going. Sony is going to be a traditional Sony. Nintendo is going to be a traditional Nintendo. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think the PlayStation 6, and it's going to be very powerful, make no mistake of that, is going to be a PlayStation 5 with a lot of power. A Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be, a Nintendo Switch with additional power. The next Xbox, and again, this is just a rumor, folks, is going to be this mythical everything box underneath your TV. It's going to look like an Xbox, but it's going to be basically a PC that just kind of plugs into your TV. And I hope that's the route they're going. And based on what, certain people of Xbox said, Phil literally just said in an interview prior to that the next hardware needs to be innovative. It needs to be something different, something that we haven't done before, and why he thinks people are going to buy an Xbox. Because I'm not a PC guy. Like, I don't have a rig, and I have the money for it. I don't game on PC because it's just not my bag. I don't want the aggravation that comes with PC gaming. I know a lot of people love PC gaming because you can hit every bell and every switch you want. It's just not for me. I just rather play on console. So the potential $700 or $800 box that's going to be this thing under the TV is going to be basically a PC, except I don't got to put any parts in it. I simply got to plug and play. That's what I want. But Korkenstein, let's bring you in on the 70%, because I think ultimately what this does for Xbox gamers who are subscribed to Xbox Game Pass is Xbox has already gone on record saying that they invest $1 billion per year, right, into Xbox Game Pass, getting content that's not their own. That's a lot of money. Last year, or the year before, they made $3 billion through Xbox Game Pass. I mean, they tripled the amount of money. So their investment, they're making profit. Now, when you hear about this, and again, I want this to be clear, folks, if I was running Xbox, I wouldn't put anything on PlayStation, right? That's just the way I've always been. But I've also have to understand that it is a business. And the way the business is working is that they need to make money from other places. And this is how they're going to do it, by putting games like Forza Horizon 5, which is already number one wishlisted on PlayStation. Why? Because it's a really good freaking racer. It's a great race, probably one of the best in the last decade for sure. And a lot of people on PlayStation 5 who don't have a PC, who don't have a Switch or an Xbox, get a chance to play it. And like I said, we're just living in weird times. But the 70% Korkenstein, I really think solidifies not only AAA development for Xbox, meaning that you're going to see more Gears, more Halo, more Forza, but you might also see older games or older IPs like Perfect Dark and like Fable, who may see a resurgence in one way or another, and that risk reward is removed. Why? Because they have investment coming, they have dollars coming from Game Pass. People are buying on PC, but now when people buy on PlayStation, when people buy on Nintendo, that's 70% that originally they never got from anyone, right? Because they've gone quote unquote third party. I think that Game Pass subscribers are the ones that are going to be winning here because the service that you pay for is consistently going to be filled with not only third, second, and indie games, but you're going to continue to see first party development. I think that's really a big deal. Let's get your thoughts.
It's just so funny and disingenuous when, you know, people took that and they're still taking it out of context, you know, or not really understanding what Phil meant by that. And somehow they think 30 is bigger than 70, which
Yes.
blows my mind, you know? Oh, I mean, I don't know what you learned in school, but you know, 70% is a lot more than 30%. You would think that would be known, but for some reason people are like 30%, 30%, 30%. But Xbox is making 70 back that they never had access to in the first place. That's the whole strategy behind this, is because the console market is stagnating. I know people are gonna, you know, but PlayStation just sold 9.5 million. No, they shipped 9.5 million. Read the financial report. There's a little byline on page 10, section 8, or a footnote 8, that says they use a sell-in basis. What that means, they count the units shipped as sold already. That's why they're getting that 9.5. So I mean, it could just be bad business. In that sense that maybe, you know, sure, they're shipping 9.5, but maybe they only sold 1 million. You just wasted 8.5 you know, million console production cost on that when you're not even going to sell it. So kind of roll back. I saw a lot of sites running with sold. No, they shipped. And that's the difference there. And Sony's been doing this for years and years and years of boosting their sales numbers because they use shipped, not sold. And that's why you're seeing a higher MAU, and people are, you know, shocked, you know, why Sony has, you know, 160 million consoles, you know, how is Xbox getting more MAUs than them? Well, because that's the reason why Sony's fluffing their numbers a bit. It's just really disingenuous all around, especially when going back to the 30 and 70. This funds the Game Pass machine. This funds the deals. This funds those smaller titles that everybody loves, that you're getting these out. You like Power World. You know, they didn't fund the project itself, but by putting it and giving, you know, that developer Pocket Pair funds, you know, to, hey, we'll give you this much money to bring this onto the title. That helps that small developer branch out and do more. And they get that because they're able to now sell games on different platforms, which means more money for Xbox, which means more money for investment, which means more games for people that are invested in that ecosystem to play. That's the theory behind it. That's the mentality. So when people are like 30%, it's so short-sighted because they're not looking at what the 70% actually does. The interview, was great with Xbox Era. I was there for that. It was a solid interview, and I know people are kind of ragging on them, like, "Oh, well, how come they didn't ask harder hitting questions?" That wasn't the point in the interview. Phil was just jumping on to say, "Hey, congrats, you guys hit 250. I was on, you know, a previous episode, seeing you guys grow. It's so awesome. You know, thanks for being part of the community." It wasn't for them to blindside him and, you know, ask about these silly questions. He devolved those information, not because they asked, but just because that's just what he wanted to answer with. It's all around. Yeah, I love this multi-platform strategy. I've been saying it since day one, 10 months ago now that I've been here. on your show, Boom. This multi-platform is great for everybody. It works for everybody. It's a very consumer-friendly move that eventually more studios and more platforms are gonna have to go to. You got PlayStation here freaking out. This is why Jim Ryan was like, we're gonna double down and make 12 live service games, is because they didn't have anything. What live service do they have other than Helldivers 2 right now and Gran Turismo? I mean, not even really too much Helldivers 2 anymore. I mean, that's why they had to pay Keeley to make it win at the Game Awards. I'm joking.
I know you're being facetious.
But no, I mean, that's just, what it is. That was one of their major staples on their live service. But other than that, they don't have anything else. And that's why they needed Concord to succeed, because that's a steady, genuine, like a steady stream of revenue. That was one of the biggest things on why Sony's in the place and PlayStation's in the place that they are, is because, they'll release a new God of War, so their MAU skyrocket for a month, and then they drop back down. Meanwhile, you have MAUs raising and highing and keeping stable for Xbox because they have Call of Duty now. They have Minecraft. They have, Forza. They have these games that consistently generate revenue, and now they're putting those games like Sea of Thieves and Forza on other platforms, which is going to keep bringing that more money in. So that's just the funny part, 3070, when it's like you don't really realize what Xbox is doing. And I know people are like, oh, it's bad, bad business. People are going to give away the console. No, it's just another way to play. Just like you have PC, just like if you have mobile, you have cloud. I mean, Avowed, your cloud saves you can use on Steam, I believe now, is because of the way that the features that works and using the account setup. Things like that. It's just more consumer friendly for people to play their games. Phil said it best. He's not going to try and get people to leave their platform, spend all this money to come to Xbox. No, just give them the games where they're already at, and that money is coming to you now, which you would have never reached before. So it's just weird all around when people start using, or they try and act like they understand a business because they just see 70-30. I don't know. It's just so frustrating. It's just mind blowing how people can try and turn this around. I don't know. I want to go and just say more, but it's just, I'm at a loss for words because it really is. It truly is frustrating on where this is going and how the media portrays. And the sad thing is, it's not even going to be until PlayStation decides to go more multi-platform. I mean, they're already on the Switch. People can say, oh, it's because Lego made them. No, it's because Lego was a smart choice to put on a platform that's more synonymous with kids.
Yep.
That wasn't Nintendo saying, I want Horizon. No, that was, Guerrilla Games and PlayStation saying, hey, we have a Horizon game that Lego, we could make this partnership. What are going to be good platforms to put it on? Nobody batted an eye at that. But guess what? Xbox is like, hey, let's put Sea of Thieves and Forza, live service games on different platforms that can rake in a ton of money for, microtransactions. Oh, they're going third party. They're going out of business. Xbox dead again for the 20th time. You see the disparity again. That's where the Xbox tax kind of comes in. That's where you get a lot of people, reporting on this in bad faith. Sony goes to Nintendo, nothing. Xbox goes to PlayStation. It's, the revelation, the second coming, doomsday, that kind of thing. So I just and this is going to happen. I'm telling you right now, this is happening. Sony's already pretty much probably going to go day and date to PC.
But that's a fact.
They will start to go and branch and open up their ecosystem to Xbox eventually. They have to. They can't keep having no live service games, or at least, a bare minimum amount of live service games without having that consistent revenue to make these AAA blockbuster bangers that they've conditioned their consumers to like. That's why a lot of people thought the state of play was, very poor, is because even though that's not the point of the state of play, to have these AAA crazy bangers, it's just more so of like a, something a little bit more, what other people are doing and what they're kind of doing, but you're not going to get God of War announcements on those, that kind of thing. But they've conditioned their consumers and their fanboys to think that that's what it is. So when they don't see God of War, when, you know, especially when they were doing all that port begging, you know, oh, we're going to see Hellblade, we're going to see MCC Master Collection there, we're going to see all of this there, and none of it showed up. And it's just kind of just really showing how weak PlayStation is right now with their game lineup and their consumers, and why they need Xbox, and why Xbox giving them is a good thing, because it drives competition, and that's what you want.